Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to this webinar on the sources of work stress inventory. Hereafter, I will refer to this in short as the SWSI. I want to thank you all for joining me today, and I hope that each and every one of us will learn something truly valuable to take with us afterwards. My goal is that the information presented here today will have an impact that stretches far wider than just this 1 hour lunch break webinar. If it's a broader circular effect that we can take back to our offices and back home, I would be happy to say mission accomplished. Please feel free to take notes throughout and be alert to upcoming answers with relation to the SWSI quiz that will be open to you at the end of this presentation. Before I start, I also want to thank the authors of the SWSI, Prof. Gideon de Bruin and Dr. Nicola Taylor, who developed this inventory for the purpose of measuring occupational stress and also to identify sources of stress in the workplace. So as everybody would have seen when you registered for this webinar, in the ever-changing and constantly evolving world of work, it is a pretty well-known fact that work stress can have a destructive effect on an individual's health, and not just on his or her health. It will also affect our quality of life and on the organization's productivity level as a whole. It's therefore significantly important that sources of work stress are identified. And it doesn't help just to identify them, we also have to look at the relationships between these different sources investigated. This webinar is aimed at empowering both organizations and individuals to learn how to either restructure their work environment to eliminate such stressors or to cope more effectively with the stresses that are present within the work setting. I saw this picture and I had to laugh because with all of the different assessments and tests and online quizzes that you can get on the internet these days, I actually thought, yeah, that is not what is going to identify if you have stress or not. Life itself will pretty much tell you. So in preparation for this webinar, I decided to go online and do a bit of my own quiz to see just how stressed I am in my job. And I felt that it started off easy enough with a few quick free assessments on how stressed I currently am and what I can do about it, with various tempting promises, some of them telling me this will only take 5 minutes, others saying you only have to give yes or no answers. Some of the surveys were only 3 to 5 questions. So I have to admit, I was pretty convinced when I read that. So so I went ahead, and some of the questions were asking me about my energy level throughout the day, which I have to admit generally takes off during a certain time of the day. Others wanted to know how I feel emotionally, which also I have to admit differs on a Monday versus a Friday. And others wanted to know how I dealt with people and unexpected changes during the day. And also if I took some me time during the day. So after playing around a bit, the outcomes were easy enough. Some of the questionnaires said if I answered yes or no to 2 or more of the questions, then I'm probably pretty healthy. Others said 3 or 4 yeses will mean that I feel overwhelmed a bit more than I would prefer. And yet another one said if I answered yes or no, yes to 5 or 6 or all of the above questions, I have to pause for a moment and take a deep breath. So yeah, as you can hear, after taking a deep breath and making some coffee, I decided to go back to what I know. And I went back to my roots as an independent psychometrist who at all times adheres to the rules and regulations of the Health Professions Council of South Africa. And that rules and regulations pretty much directed me to the sources of work stress inventory. The first thing that I looked for was more of those alluring promises to get me hooked on the SWSI. And in short, what convinced me to explore this tool is that it's got an administration time of about 20 to 30 minutes, excuse me, and 59 items. Training-wise, no training is required for me as a registered HPCSA professional. The scoring options will be done via the JVR Bureau service. I can do it in both English and Afrikaans, and I may use it to assess individuals 16 years and older with a minimum English reading or education level of grade 8. So to me, that seemed pretty good. Another one that I was hooked on that will be a bit different than just the 45 questions that I just did on the internet. So in this webinar, we will be looking at the underlying theory of the SWSI. I would also like to refer to the relevance of this theory to the workplace. We'll be looking at the history and development of the assessment very shortly. Also the conceptual framework, how we interpret and apply the SWSI, also research, and then I'm going to name a few possible assessment combinations as well as debate that is ongoing out there. So if we look at the underlying theory, what we do know is that work creates different kinds of difficulties and different stressful levels to different people. What I perceive as stressful and draining to me is not necessarily perceived as stressful to other people. So we know for a fact that stress has a harmful effect on both an individual's health and quality of life. And when that happens to me, it tends to affect my level of productivity because I don't feel well at work, I don't have as much output as I would like to, and my mind is generally not focused on where it should be. So it's therefore very important that sources of work stress are identified and that the relationships between these different sources of stress are investigated. Why would I want to investigate it? As this would enable both organizations and individuals to learn how to either restructure the work environments to eliminate such stresses, or it will help us to deal more effectively with the stresses that are present within the work setting. If we go to the next slide, I want you to take notes for your upcoming quiz that at an organizational level, the SWSI can be used to assess the general level of employee stress. And as a result, we can pinpoint areas in the organization that may contribute to that employee stress. So in this sense, the SWSI may contribute to organizational diagnosis, and it can even be an additional evaluation in terms of organizational climate. The SWSI can also be used within the context of a comprehensive organizational evaluation or as part of a structured employee wellness program. Take note that the aim was developed. We want to use the SWSI to identify sources of stress present within the work setting. Although it was initially constructed to be used in an academic setting, the construct measured by the SWSI are relevant to any work and environment. Person's profile on the SWSI allows them to isolate problem areas in their work environment, and we do that in order to address them. If we look at the development of the SWSI, you will see that the development of the SWSI was a two-step phase where data obtained from the initial version of the test provided the basis for the refinement of the SWSI. So the first version consisted of that 15-item general work stress scale and 9 sources of work stress scales that constituted the longer version. We are going to go into more detail on the general work stress scale and the sources of work stress scales next. But in short, what I want you to take note of on this slide is after extensive factor analysis, item analysis, and scale analysis, the authors arrived at an optimal structure of the SWSI, and that is how we got to the latest version. The data obtained from the combined group described in this development were used to create norms. Also take note that the sample was mostly comprised of academic and administrative staff at 2 higher education institutions. The purpose of the SWSI mainly is to provide a measure of occupational stress that not only provides an indication of general levels of stress, but also to highlight possible triggers or sources of stress. These sources of stress can be identified and addressed in order to provide a more suitable working environment for employees. We also know that dealing with stress in the workplace goes both ways. It's a personal thing, and the company can also help the employees with this process. In order to achieve this, the SWSI inventory was divided into 2 parts: the general work stress scale and also the sources of work stress scales. The scales to be used in this inventory were identified after a thorough review of work stress literature. Also, the constructs identified were compared to those obtained from interviews with employees as to aspects of the workplace that cause them stress. The general work stress scale, with its 9 items, consists of questions concerning the level of stress caused by work. And the sources of work stress scale consist of statements regarding aspects of work that may cause stress. So you will see that the SWSI goes full circle and looks at everything that can possibly contribute to my level of stress in the workplace. Reading this, I felt a lot better about the fact that there is assessments out there that can do that, and I don't have to just answer 3 to 5 questions and deal with the consequences afterwards. If we look at the interpretation and use of the results, like we said, the general work stress scale is to determine to what extent work itself is a source of stress for the individual. Where your high scorers will spend a great deal of time worrying about their work, and they may even consider changing jobs to avoid the stress associated with their work. And low scorers will tend not to find their jobs to be too stressful. So we know that the SWSI was developed in order to provide a measure of occupational work stress that not only determines the general level of stress, but also identifies possible key sources of strain. Please take note that this general work stress scale may also be used separately as a screening test for individuals or the organization when assessing your employees' mental and physical health, as we know that the two are often related. When we look at the sources of work stress scales, role ambiguity refers to the amount of stress that a person experiences due to not knowing what is expected of him or her in the workplace. This scale then consists of 7 items regarding the specificity of instructions given and expectations regarding the individual's duties. High scorers would say that they experience much stress from being unsure of what is expected from them at work. And your low scorers either do not mind having vague assignments or know exactly what is expected from them in their jobs. Another source of stress can possibly be relationships, where this scale provides an indication of the amount of stress a person experiences due to poor interpersonal relationships at work. The 8 items in this scale center on the individual's experience of negative relationships with others within the workplace. On the scale, we will see that your high scorers tend to experience large amounts of stress due to poor working relationships with fellow employees, or they may be subjected to interpersonal abuse or bullying, versus low scorers who either have very little contact with people at work or have good relationships with their colleagues and superiors. They are generally not subject to interpersonal abuse by co-workers. When we look at tools and equipment, this scale gives us an indication of the stress experienced by an individual in dealing with technical equipment and other office resources. The scale consists of 5 items that focus on the quality and availability of equipment central to the individual's job, where your high scorers will find themselves exasperated by a lack of appropriate tools or having to work with outdated or insufficient equipment that is vital to the completion of their jobs, versus low scorers that deal well with technical problems that may arise from working with high-tech equipment, or they have access to the necessary resources with which to do their job. If we look at career advancement, this scale measures the degree of stress an individual experiences as a result of not progressing in his or her career as planned. The 5 items in this scale involve the frustrations an individual may experience in being unable to advance along the career path they have chosen. If we look at high scorers, they may feel discouraged and frustrated by not advancing in their careers, and they are concerned about how to further their job prospects, versus your low scorers will perceive themselves to be moving forward in their career as they had intended, and they see opportunities for growth. Job security, if we look at this scale, which is quite a big one in South Africa, seeing recent changes in the market, this scale gives an indication of the degree of stress experienced by an individual due to concern about the security of their job. This scale is highly correlated with the career advancement scale of the SWSI. The scale has 4 items regarding an individual's feelings of vulnerability to job loss in his or her present work situation, where we can see that high scorers will tend to worry about the stability of their position, especially when there are changes foreseen in the organization. Versus your low scorers who are confident that changes in the workplace will not affect their status. Lack of autonomy, if I look at this scale, it gives an indication of the degree of stress experienced by an individual due to a lack of decision-making authority in the workplace. The 7-item scale centers on the individual's experience of having to work in an environment that is rigid and structured. High scorers here will find themselves aggravated by not being able to make or implement their own decisions, and they will typically feel cramped in or not able to think outside of the box in the workplace. This is also the people that might find that administrative details occupy a lot of their time and that it may constrain their abilities at work. Then you get your low scorers who are either able to work freely without answering to anyone, or they are satisfied with the amount of decision-making authority that they have in the workplace. These people typically feel comfortable with the rules in the workplace. If we look at the work-home interface option, this scale is an indication of the stress experienced by an individual due to having to balance the demands at work with the demands at home. The 8 items in this scale concentrate on the balance between the individual's home and work environment. My high scorers may have little support at home for the work they do. There can be role clashes and it can cause friction in both environments. If you have friction in both environments, it's almost impossible to give of yourself as much as you can in both environments. Versus your low scorers have a good balance between their work and home life, and one does not interfere with the success of the other. If we look at workload, this scale measures how well the individual perceives they are able to cope with the demands made on them at work. The scale consists of 6 items regarding work overload and the individual's perception of being able to complete tasks in the time available. The high scorers and workload may feel that work takes up way too much of their time and that they are unable to cope with the amount of work landing on their desks. Versus my low scorers who are able to handle the amount of work allocated to them efficiently without allowing it to encroach on their personal time. If we look at the statistical properties of the SWSI, and this is something that I always carry with me since the days of writing the board exam, I always look at the statistical properties of any tool. And for the SWSI, when we look at the reliability, and validity. We know that the correlations between the factor scales for each of the sources of work stress scales were all at or above 0.95, provided support for the construct validity of the scale. So I am very happy with the reliability coefficients that you will see for the SWSI, as well as looking at the norms. Like I said earlier, that the development was a two-step phase. The data obtained for the initial version of the test provided the basis for refinement of the SWSI. So norm-wise, we're also very happy to say that this tool has been adapted for the SA population. Administration and scoring of the SWSI, and scoring of both the internet version and the paper and pencil version is done via the Bureau service at JVR. So depending on the specific need that a person has, as well as the targeted audience, the option is there to either go for the online report, where you can get an online electronic report, or you can do pencil and paper administration, but it will still be sent into our bureau department, where a report will be generated for you. Another interesting thing to look at is when I make use of the SWSI, what is possible assessment combinations that I can use? Very important before we go to that is that the SWSI can be used for the following purposes. Please take note. It can either be an individual assessment that can provide important information about the individual's level of stress and identify the sources of the stress for counseling purposes. It can also be an organizational assessment that can allow the organization to identify problem areas in the workplace and to plan and implement interventions to improve employee well-being. Or the SWSI can be used to evaluate the effectiveness of individual and organizational intervention programs. The SWSI will definitely not be used in isolation. So that's why I want to look at possible assessment combinations that we can use. So if we look at the SWSI and the MBTI is a tool used to assess personality type or preference on 4 dimensions. So if I add my SWSI to the MBTI, I can apply this result to communicating. Because in the MBTI, all aspects of your type will influence how you communicate, and especially as part of a team. Very important, in addition to what you will get from your SWSI, you can also keep in mind that communication for our different types include telling others what kind of information you need, which will help deal with the stress load in the workplace as well. Also, using your MBTI facet results, you can learn how to ask others what they need, how to monitor your impatience when other staff dominate, and also to realize that others likely are not trying to annoy you when they use their own communication styles. Other information that we can get from the MBTI to use with the SWSI is how to make better decisions. Effective decision making requires gathering information from a variety of perspectives and applying sound methods of evaluating that information. So it's very important for us to bear in mind that when it comes to making decisions, we don't ask the same questions. We don't necessarily hear the same answers. So a lot of times it's your side and my side, and that's why it's so important to meet each other in the middle, just to bring down that stress levels that's already high in the workplaces of today. I will also look at the MBTI in combination with the SWSI and use those results to manage change, because change is inevitable and it affects all of us in different ways. A combination of the MBTI and the SWSI can help me personally to be clear about what is changing and what is remaining the same in my workplace. Also, it will help me to identify what I need to know to understand the change and then seek out that information. When it comes to others, when they have to deal with change, it will encourage open discussion about the change with everyone around me. and so that we are all aware that this is easier for some than for others. And it will help to that we can make sure that both logical reasons and personal or social values have been considered. So very important, the MBTI comes in because your personality type can definitely influence your style of managing change, which is always stressful to probably 99% of us. And then the last link that I saw between the SWSI and the MBTI is how we can apply results to managing conflict. Because conflict is stressful, it's inevitable when working with others. And people of distinct personality types may differ in what they define as conflict, how they react to it, and how they reach resolutions. And although sometimes it's unpleasant, conflict often leads to improved work situations and enhanced relationships if we handle it the correct way. So using the SWSI and the MBTI, I personally think it will help us to take care of getting the work done while maintaining our relationships with the people involved. And also to recognize that all perspectives have something to add, but any perspective used in its extreme and to the exclusion of its opposite will ultimately impede conflict resolution, and it will be a no-win situation. If we look at the SWSI and in combination with the WPI, which is short for the Work Personality Index, there's also a lot of wonderful information that can come through a combined effort of the two. For those of you not familiar with the WPI, this is to identify personality traits that directly relate to work performance. So the Work Personality Index will provide a clear framework for me to understand the impact of, say, for instance, my personality on my job performance. It will also help to identify key motivators and behaviors essential for hiring the right people and developing employees and supporting employees. Just to mention, unlike other personality assessments, the WPI only measures personality traits that are directly related to the work environment and on-the-job behaviors, which makes it a perfect combination for the SWSI. There's various reports to use, but should we use it together, it's a powerful tool to complement ability testing and structured interviews as well. We bring in the SWSI to look at stress, and this will definitely help us to focus on personal characteristics and our behaviors in the workplace. It can really help us to take note of our preferences, our strengths, and techniques for increasing effectiveness. The SWSI in combination with the EQI is pure gold. Everybody who hasn't heard of the EQI before, this is to scientifically measure emotional intelligence. If we look at the EQI, we can use the EQI to measure a set of emotional and social skills that influence the way people perceive and express themselves. Also, it will help to develop and maintain social relationships, cope with challenges, and use emotional information in an effective and meaningful way. The EQI includes 5 validity indices, rendering a total emotional intelligence score. We also will look at various composite scores to come up with an overall EQ. But the EQ, in short, looks at self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal relationships, decision-making, stress management. All words that I'm hoping that at this stage you make the connection with stress and with the SWSI and how they go hand in hand to take care of one another. I also want to look at the SWSI and the locus of control inventory, which is a multidimensional measure of locus of control. The LCI is a South African assessment designed to measure this core psychological construct known as locus of control. Locus of control refers to the extent to which individuals believe that they are in control of their lives in general. This personality construct, in turn, affects an array of important issues. For example, my attitude, emotional health, and academic success, to name but a few. Personally, I'm fascinated by locus of control. And I did a bit of further research, and in an article called Coping with Stress in the Workplace, Westhuizen and Van Lille had some interesting findings that they published, and the crux of the matter is the direct relationship between external locus of control and stress indicates that individuals who feel that control over situations is largely located externally to themselves are high levels of stress, while those who feel that control is not located externally are experiencing lower levels of stress. There's also very interesting debates going on regarding stress in the workplace. How do we measure it? Why do we measure it? Does it make a difference? I hope that at this stage of the webinar you have taken note that it will definitely make a difference. Catherine Miller wrote an article where she asked, is there a connection between intelligence and stress? And her question was, if there is a connection, do smarter people feel more stressed? This is also something that I've personally wondered about quite a lot. And say if we use the SWSI for selection and just by itself, what will be the outcomes of that? And through research, we see that there is actually no evidence that there is a connection between intelligence and stress. In Catherine Miller's article, she says that researchers have looked at this for many years. And what I found is that there's really no determining factor. Intelligence really doesn't have anything to do with your ability to feel stress or even with your ability to cope with stress. What they do know after all of the research is that if an individual is finding that they're dealing with difficult things in their lives, that really doesn't have anything to do with their intelligence level. We find that sometimes people who have higher intelligence might actually find different ways to cope or different strategies to use, but that's really the only difference that there is. There's no difference in actual levels of stress, which pretty much settles that debate for me. I would like to bring us back to the SWSI and just in short a summary of the sources of work stress scale. We know that it helps professionals to determine general levels of occupational stress and also to identify possible key sources of stress. These sources of stress in work environments can then be isolated in order to assess them. We know that the SWSI can be used within the context of a comprehensive organizational evaluation or as part of a structured employee wellness program. Professionals may use it as a screening test if the individual or on the individual or the organization when assessing the employee's mental and physical health, as the two are often related. Research-wise, we know that it's good, reliable, and valid, and that we do have an appropriate norm group against what we can measure. And the good news is a South African developed assessment norm for the SA population. It's been used in a number of different studies investigating stress, burnout, emotional intelligence, self-directed learning, and coping in a variety of contexts. I would like to thank each and every one of you for participating in this webinar. I hope that everyone looks at stress with a different perspective going forward, and that we encourage and support each other to really speak up when you feel like you are sinking, and not to sound cliche, but really not to suffer in silence when it comes to stress, as the effects are so much broader than just myself. Garvey wrote an article where he says that the effects of high stress is often hidden at work because reputations have to be protected. The employee has a fear of failure and all energies are directed towards keeping him going while pretending that it's not happening. Kevin Westhuizen writes an article where he says the measurement of work stress within South African companies, is it a luxury or is it a necessity? And he answers it so nicely by saying a system of stress measurement and management at all levels is not a luxury in South Africa. It's also not something nice to do for humanistic reasons. It's a matter of physical, psychological, economic, and social survival. stress measurement in particular can help to address the real problems in a preventive manner. Please join us again next week for another lunchtime webinar. And the questions to follow on the SWSI will be sent to you in the next email. And also, if you have any questions, any suggestions, anything to share with me, please send me an email at lizelle.berger@jvrafrica.co.za. And thank you for your time this afternoon. Goodbye.